Hey there, welcome to the making of the coronavirus short I released a few days ago. Today I'm gonna show you how I did this.
Yeah, have a look, bros. Fuck.
Okay, so briefly, I'm gonna go over the general thought process I go through when I make a video of this kind. I'm gonna explain a bit of how the filming happens, the editing. I'm gonna focus a bit more on the visual effects side of things, because that's the most interesting part. The voice of the coronavirus and any general comments I have about the whole procedure. I just want to point out that this is not gonna be a step-by-step tutorial of how to make the effects, because that would take a much longer video. This is more like the general concepts or the mindsets of when approaching a solution like this, and also some breakdown of what I did so you have some sort of idea. If you haven't watched the video, I would suggest going to watch it before you watch the making of, but also if you have watched it, you can watch it again because it's fun. Let's get started. So the funny thing is, we shot this entire short with an iPhone 11, which wasn't even mine, it was my flatmate's, and a cheap lav mic I bought from Amazon for like 20 pounds because I didn't have my equipment here and half of my stuff is back home and I can't get it right now because everyone is in lockdown. So the very first thing when I'm writing the script is I'm thinking what are the limitations I have and the possibilities I want to have in my script. For this one, I knew I wanted to have a giant coronavirus particle floating and talking, but I also knew I didn't want this to take me like 5 months to make in post. So I had the effects in my mind of how they were gonna look approximately, and I knew it would take a couple of weeks, maybe 3, from past experience. And it actually took 3 weeks to finish of everyday work, which is slightly longer than I expected, but that happens. Also, what helps when you're writing the script is to visualize how the effect is gonna look, how it's gonna be animated. Things like that are gonna help you when you're shooting the film as well. So when we started filming, we obviously didn't have the coronavirus particle as an actor in the set because it was a bit hard to get. Well, not really, I guess. But what you usually do is you explain to the actors, which in this case it was just me and Andonis, how the effect is gonna be, so they have an idea in their head of how they should react to it and stuff like that. So when we were filming, we got the shots of where the coronavirus would be. It was mostly empty plates of footage, like my kitchen. Usually when you're doing the effects, you want to be able to combine as much practical stuff you can during your actual filming, because that would really help sell the effect after in post. For example, we used this red light, which was actually just like a light. I put like a red tape on and we casted it on my face when the coronavirus was supposed to appear. After I put in the lens flares and stuff like that, it kind of helped sell it a bit more. And because during the shoot we didn't have the coronavirus again, I asked Andonis to deliver the lines to me as if he would be the coronavirus and I would react to them so that there would be some flow of conversation.
Like Santa Claus? I've been working for the MI6 for some time now and I'm here on a mission to stop a huge threat from destroying the world.
That's James Bond.
I'm not the hero. The word deserves, but I'm the only one.
And when we're doing the scene together on the couch, there was no one there to deliver the lines, so we kind of like had to take a break, look at the script, and then keep shooting it.
So, how long are you staying for? We can't kick this guy.
No way we can get this guy out. So now, after we finish filming, let's take a look at the editing. So this is Adobe Premiere. This is my go-to editing software. So this is my final timeline after I cut everything in. So at the beginning, when I was doing the short and there was like an animated character, what I want to do is make a rough cut of the whole film, where instead of the character, we have the clean plates where nothing is inside. Like here, we have the kitchen. And I want to make sure the flow of the movie is kind of right before I start adding the voices and the effects. So here, I'm going to show you an example.
What the hell are you doing here? Visit me.
So you see, it's just me and nothing. We're just talking, okay? It's a bit sad, but you know, it's going to look better later on. So after this rough cut is done, I want to bring in the voice of the coronavirus. So for the voice of the coronavirus, it's kind of interesting. At the beginning, I was the one who did the voice, but it didn't really sound right because it was like a very similar voice to mine. I would have added effects, but I still thought like the performance was not as realistic as I wanted. So I dropped a text to my friend, Andreas Egonamu, who lives in Germany right now. And I asked him, dude, do you want to do this voice for the coronavirus? And he said yes. So the final voice you hear in the video is his voice without any alterations. And I think that came out much better and much funnier. And the dialogue was like more dynamic. So that was a good choice in the end. Basically what he did is he sent me clips of his voice where he was reading the script, and I would then bring them into Premiere and cut them in where they were supposed to go. And if I had any clips where I didn't really like it, I would ask him to redo it and send them back to me. So here I would place all the clips where his voice would go. I'll just show you this example here.
So, how long are you staying for?
Bro, I shouldn't be more than 2 weeks. 4 max. Yo, dude, check it.
Then I make sure to refine my cuts so the dialogue flows very well. And then I had to move on to making the effects. So for the effects, I knew what I wanted in my head, approximately. Of course, the final result is always different. So I wanted a giant virus floating around. And my idea was I was gonna find a 3D model of a virus online. And I was gonna use that to do the animation and everything, so I don't have to model from scratch on my own, because that would make the procedure a bit longer as well. So I was looking around for 3D virus models, and I looked quite a bit, and I tried different things, and I really didn't like what I saw. So I was like, at the end, okay, screw it, I have to do it from scratch to get something better. And one of the main reasons I didn't want to do it from scratch is that my go-to 3D software was Autodesk 3ds Max, but that's only on Windows, and I've switched to a Mac recently, which I like and dislike for different reasons, which is not the main purpose of this video. And macOS doesn't have 3ds Max, so I would have to do it in something like Blender, and I don't know how to use Blender, and I would have to learn it, and it would just make things more difficult. But in the end, because I couldn't find the model I wanted, I had to watch some tutorials and then learn how to model a virus in Blender, which I did. This is the final virus I created inside Blender. It actually didn't take that long. It's quite an easy model. It's like you basically start by creating something like a sphere. So you make something like this, and then basically you increase the subdivision count and you extrude some of the edges. You get something a bit more weird like the virus, and after you add some smoothing, it kind of looks like this in the end. And then you go into your material editor and you create the material like this. But the material wasn't really needed in the end, because I used Element 3D to process the virus in After Effects, which I'm going to show you in a bit. So you don't actually need to do the material part. You can just have like a plain model like this. So I've only done one quick tutorial with Blender, but I do find it to be a bit more confusing than the 3ds Max. I don't know if that's the case, or it's because I haven't really used it. I don't know, what do you guys think? Do you guys use any of the two software? Let me know which one you think is better. I mean, Blender is obviously free, so that's a benefit, but learning any 3D package is quite a steep learning curve, and it's not the nicest thing to switch 3D software for no reason. Okay, so now we're in After Effects, which is the visual effects software I usually use, and I'm gonna break down this shot of the virus floating in my kitchen, which I actually cleaned up to make it look nicer for the video. But as you can see, I didn't really do a very good job, because you can see a bunch of shit here at the side where I just put it on a chair to kind of like convince you that the kitchen is tidy, when it's really not most of the time. So what I used was this plugin called Element 3D by Video Copilot, and it's a really good plugin if you want to do 3D work in After Effects without going into 3D software that much. To start with, I brought in my model that I just created in Blender, which is this one here, and this is really small here, so I'm gonna hit the normalize size button. Okay, so this is the model I had made in Blender. As you see, there's no materials coming in. What I did is I created the materials. I chose to make it pink for some reason. I think I just like the color pink. Maybe it's also because the coronavirus is officially like gray and pink or something. Who knows? We're never gonna find out. So if I go into the material here, and I can go to the illumination and change the color to something like pink or whatever. Let's do it like, let's make a red one in this case, which kind of looks more like evil. And I would change the Fresnel bias to get like more of a shape I wanted, or change the base color, and basically like play around with the settings until you have something you like. So this was the final look I thought would work for me, and I kept it like this. So after we put this in our scene, I wanna do some color correction to make it blend a bit nicer in the background I have. So I added some tint, some curves to play with the colors. Here the RGB channels, some of the levels. I added a small glow, not much, but it's subtle, and this was the look I was happy with. But as you can see, there were no lights in the scene, so I wanted to make some lights to simulate the lighting I had in the room, which is always a big part if you're doing 3D work. Because I don't really know how a virus would be lit in real life, I used a chessboard to try and match this 3D chessboard to the lighting I have in the scene. So in the scene, I know, because it's my house, and also I can see it from the footage, that I have some lighting right here coming from the ceiling, and I have some lighting, which would be the strongest lighting in the scene, coming from outside. I also have some light coming this direction, which is more like a fill light. So I started by making the window light, which is a light I placed around here. You can see this light casting on the chessboard from this side. You can see the little highlights. I added the ceiling lights, which casts a light from the top, and then I added the fill light, which brings a bit of a fill on the side to make the image look a bit nicer. And this does look like it blends with the background. It's a bit brighter than I would do it, mostly because after I changed to the coronavirus model, I had to put some more lighting to make it look a bit nicer. So you start with a basic draft of the lighting and then you change it to match your actual model in this case. You can see now we have some like really nice spotlight here from a ceiling light. If I turn it off and on, you can see the difference. Or like the light from the side coming from the window light. And of course, I didn't want just the coronavirus to be in the scene. You want to blend in some more elements to make it look nicer. So what I did is I made some particles. For example, these small particles that fly around. I'll just solve the layer for you. So I used CC Particle World to make the particles, and I made them slightly bigger than the coronavirus. And I played with the birth rate, the shape, the size, how fast they move, stuff like that to make them look like floating particles. And then I duplicated this element because I wanted more like a puffy smoke feeling on top of the coronavirus. So it's like similar elements. I changed the size, the opacity to make it look a bit more like smoky. And I put this on top of the small particles that were flying, and we had our final image, which is the coronavirus here with the small particles and the cloud particles on top. Everything combined gives it a nicer effect. Last thing was the animation. I knew I didn't want to make something very complex, like having these little tentacles slightly move, because I would make it more difficult to animate. What I decided to do was to add some rotation. So I wanted the virus to rotate quite slowly over the progression of the scene. And I also put a mesh warp, and I basically distorted the image every 2 seconds to make it seem like the virus was breathing or something. So this was a bit subtle, but I think it helped the effect. So on the couch scene, we have the coronavirus typing on an iPhone. I don't know what it's doing. Maybe it's on Tinder. Maybe it's talking with other coronaviruses. First thing, the way I did this is, if I hide the phone, I made a matte mask over here, over the couch, so that I could sell the effect that the coronavirus was sitting on the couch, because it was like this and it doesn't really look like it's sitting there. So I added the mask, feathered it a bit to make it look like it's sitting. And the other thing I added to sell the effect a bit more is I added the shadows right underneath the coronavirus. So you see, if you don't put any shadows, it just looks like the object is there. But if you add a bit of shadow, which is just like a black solid, it just helps sell that like there's like something casting a shadow on the couch. And then I introduced the iPhone, which again was a 3D model. I found this one on Video Copilot. I didn't actually model this from scratch. It's just like an iPhone 4, I think. Let me see. No, it doesn't say. Okay, it's an iPhone, and it came with like a default home screen of the iPhone. So what I did is I created a custom couch surfing app with these profiles here. So I made this in Photoshop. Everything was from scratch except the couch surfing logo. I put like the viruses in like different places. Like this is Martina Bellucci in Italy, in Rome, holding a slice of pizza, because that's not stereotypical at all. This guy in New York, Marc Jacobs, having like a USA hat. This guy Huang Ling in Hong Kong holding a pot of noodles, and this woman Hilda Muller or something in Berlin holding a nice pint of beer. I made the UI and everything to look a bit like the couchsurfing app I googled. Disclaimer, I've never used couchsurfing myself, but I know it's a thing, so I thought it was a funny thing to add to the script. And then I brought this into a composition in After Effects, and I did some animation where it's supposed to like slide down, and I replaced the texture that comes from the iPhone screen with that clip. So now when we have the shot with the iPhone that's animated with the couchsurfing screen, it's that video playing behind it, which is a really nice touch. And also I did some animation here, like some simple keyframes to like rotate the iPhone coming from the coronavirus to the screen right here. And the last thing was the ending, because here we have these 4 coronaviruses. If you don't know the meme, this is based on Ghana's pallbearers, which is these guys over here. It's like a very popular meme nowadays. And what I basically did is I took each of these coronaviruses, I added some glasses right here, I put a nice hat on to make it look like one of those 4 guys, and I made 4 duplicates. I changed the hats and the sunglasses a bit. I randomly rotated them so they don't look exactly the same, and I did some random scaling, like this is a bit on the back, this is a bit on the front, and I added some random movement to make them like float in midair. And after you do all the VFX, you basically replace your clean plates with the VFX, and you have your sequence with the VFX shots in place. So that was it. I hope this gave you a good idea of the pipeline of what you usually do to make a video like this. Of course, the effects could have been much better and much more elaborate, but for the time I had, this is what I decided to go with. So let me know in the comments below, do you have any questions I haven't covered? Do you have any suggestions? Do you want to learn something more about this? And of course, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell up above to be notified when I make a new video. I will see you guys next time. Take care.